Welcome to another quarantine edition of the Zelo Zone. Matt Bacalling here with you once again, and this time my very distinguished guest, Mr. Mason Conrad. Welcome to the Zelo Zone, man. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So how about yourself?
Doing as well as we possibly can be. And I have to preface this for our viewers and listeners, is that they're probably going to get a nice surprise out of this interview in general, just because I don't think you've done a ton of interviews over the course of your professional wrestling career or personal career, at least not that I have remembered or have been able to see. Is that pretty accurate?
That's pretty accurate. Yeah, I'm a pretty personal person, so I don't really like to have my stuff kind of out there.
For sure. Well, we appreciate the gesture and the time to have this conversation, especially in this crazy world that we're currently living in. But I think it's at least fun for us to be able to have a conversation, and also for your fans and the wrestling world to get a little bit of an insider look at exactly who Mason Conrad is outside of the day-to-day matches and everything else that they get to see you in. So you live in Wisconsin, just south of Milwaukee, right around the Milwaukee area. How is my question has been for everyone that we've talked to so far? How is quarantine treating you?
It's been all right.
Yeah,
I live alone, so
sure.
Too many conversations with my cat to be proud of, but it's going all right. Thankfully, I'm able to actually work from home.
Right on.
Awesome. So I've been here working from home for about 4 weeks now.
Very nice. And I mean, I don't know if you've had any interaction with this at all, but I know that Wisconsin itself has kind of been under some heat lately for their way that they're addressing quarantine and having allowed some of the primary elections to go on this past week, even with the stay-at-home and shelter-in-home kind of things in place. Have you gone out at all in the area? Have you noticed the way that things are given all of the current restrictions that are going on and how that's affecting you and everyone around you?
Yeah, I've only gone out twice just to go to the store.
Yeah.
And some people are taking it serious, some people not. Like, there's plenty of people who were walking around when I was out without masks, without gloves.
Yeah.
Walmart was a madhouse.
Oh, I'm
Everything
sure.
was off the shelf, sold out. And
it's crazy, man. Unprecedented times. It's getting cliche now, but it really is as unpredictable and just kind of crazy. So let's talk a little bit about wrestling. Obviously, this is a wrestling channel. That's how most people know you in the public world. How long have you been a professional wrestler?
Since 2007.
Right on. Okay, so that's given. That was so for people who don't know, you and I went to high school together in Gurnee,
Yep.
Illinois, Warren Township High School. Go Blue Devils! So that was the year that we graduated. So you do. We both have a background in amateur wrestling. We're both in the high school wrestling team, freshman through senior year or something like that.
And in case you forgot, we actually met in middle school, 8th grade.
We did meet in middle school. That's right. That's right. Our middle schools had a meet right around 8th grade, probably. So even a year before we started high school, which was probably the first time that you and I ever had any interaction.
Yeah.
But I do recall that. So you have a history of amateur wrestling in your background, and you got your start around 2007, and we can talk through a little bit of that. But this past weekend would have been Harley Race's birthday. And you were trained by Harley Race. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that came about and what it was like going down and working with that program?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was about maybe 1 year into my training with professional wrestling with Tony Scarpone, Bryce Benjamin, Robert Ego Anthony.
Yeah.
And Tony took me aside. He's like, honestly, he's just like, I have nothing left that I can personally teach you. One of the qualifications that Tony did have was to wrestle the Invisible Man.
Okay.
I actually went into the ring and I wrestled the Invisible Man, and Tony was just like, all right. And he talked to me privately, and he recommended me to go to the Harley camp because when him and Rob went down there, they both learned a lot.
Sure.
And that I could definitely benefit from that by going down there and following in their steps.
And that was in Missouri?
Missouri, yeah. So then me, Tony Scarpone, and Bobby Ashton Vuitton.
Yeah.
We took a trip down there, saw a show. I met Harley and his wife. Got Harley's wife's information. Her name was BJ. You've been emailing her on and off for maybe a week. They didn't have any available spots because they had this special arrangement with an apartment complex. If they're able to get a spot for us to come in, we would sign up for the class, get the apartment, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
She said there was about a year of a waiting.
Wow.
Yeah, and then
this was like around 2008 or so.
2008, 2009.
Okay.
I think I was. Yeah, I think I was 21, 22.
Okay.
So then I I think maybe a month went by, and I got a random email from her saying, "Hey, something just opened up. If you're interested, let me know." And she at this point had told me a whole year for the waiting list, and so I jumped right on it. I told my employer at the time, like, "Hey, I got to give you my 2 weeks."
Just pieced out.
Yeah, told my dad. I was like, "Hey, I'm doing this," and then was talking to BJ, talked to the apartment complex, moved straight down there. Unfortunately, the weekend I moved down there, Harley's wife went into the hospital.
Oh, no.
And then unfortunately, she passed that same weekend.
Oh, man, that was that weekend.
Yeah,
Wow.
so my very first encounter with Harley, unfortunately, was at his wife's funeral.
Holy cow. You attended the funeral?
I did, yes, out of respect, because I was there. I've been talking to her on and off for 2 months. I was just like, I want to pay my respects.
Wow.
So then that's where I first met him. And then, of course, the first day of training picked up the week after.
Okay.
At the time down there, it was his wrestling name was Bowen Naginu. He's actually in WWE right now as a referee.
Okay.
And then Brian Breaker, he was down there as well. Simon Gotch,
mm-hmm.
he was down there training as well, learning from the three of them primarily.
Gotcha. They were part of the coaching staff?
They're part of the coaching staff,
okay.
Correct. Yeah, Harley was always on site. He was always watching from a distance. They were the ones primarily in the ring, of course, doing everything just because Harley couldn't physically do certain things. But, okay, he was there watching, critiquing, breaking everything down for us.
Gotcha. Now, was this like a camp or was this like an extended period training?
This was like a legit school. If I wanted to stay down there, I could have stayed down there for like an extended period of time. I think when I got down there, Gotch was down there for, I think he said 6 or 7 years.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
Yeah.
Long.
Yeah, so he was living down there for quite some time, so I could have possibly stayed there for an extended period of time.
Gotcha. So how long did you stay there for?
I was there for about two or 3 months.
Okay. And what was that experience like otherwise?
It was good. Like just having his knowledge and him being able to break things down for you. He had that very old school mentality.
Yeah.
But then just to hear something simple like tackle, drop down, and all of a sudden him to be like, "Hey, stop." And then in his old raspy voice, he would just start breaking things down. He's like, "You need to stop it. You need to put some oomph into that." And like just little things to make sure it looked real and everything was a part of the process of the whole wrestling experience and making it look like a fight.
Incredible. That's awesome. And which is also kind of amazing too, because you obviously have been doing this since around 2007, which is 13 plus years now at this point. But there are still probably a lot of fans and current wrestling fans who are unfamiliar with who Mason Conrad is and maybe some of the stuff that you did in those early days. But there was quite a bit that you were doing. I mean, I know this obviously because we're friends, but there was a lot of stuff that you were putting out there in 2008, 2009, 2010, very early on in the initial iterations of Gali and in Underground, and even I know you worked in England for a little while and kind of got your reps in there and in the Midwest kind of as a whole. What was and that was kind of in the time even prior to social media being as big as it is now. Like maybe we had MySpace and some early iterations of what Facebook is, but YouTube certainly wasn't as prevalent, so there wasn't necessarily the need to have your persona out there on Twitter and interacting the way that a lot of talent and wrestlers do now. But you were out there doing the Road Warrior stuff early on, like kind of take me back to what that experience was like, and especially being at a young age and kind of breaking in there, especially when the Chicago wrestling scene was completely different than what it is today. And a lot of fans that are out there who are watching some of the stuff that we're doing now are not familiar with what that looked like.
Oh yeah. When I first started training when I was 18, I think it was AAW, it was PCW.
Yeah.
And Gali, like my first week of training, Gali had their very first show.
Right.
And my second week of training, Gali had their second show, and they asked me if I wanted to be on it after just 2 weeks of training.
Wow, no kidding. It was that short into it. Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so I've been wrestling just as long as Gali has been around.
Yeah, and that's been a kind of a primary home base for you, especially early on. But I know you worked at some other places, and you've had a couple iterations of what your persona and your gimmick has been. Some people may remember you doing the Victoria's Secret tag team with Calypso or Brian Caselli, for those of you who may know him. And you guys worked at Vanguard quite a bit too, I believe, early on. Was that right? We haven't talked to Isaiah at all, so I don't know if people are familiar with what Vanguard was, but if you can walk us through that a little bit too.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, so it all started with Gali. Carlos gave me plenty of opportunities to just a place to hone my craft, to learn, especially with both the hybrid of the American and Lucha Libre style.
Yeah.
And then at that point, that's when James Camione or JC Smalls or James Russo, depending on what iteration you want to go with of his name, Bryce Benjamin, Tony Scarpone started Underground Wrestling. Started wrestling for Underground and then for Gali. And then, of course, from that point, we started just meeting people. Isaiah Velasquez came in, and then I asked him about where he works. He said Vanguard Wrestling All-Star Alliance, VWAA. Told him I'd be interested, and that me and Brian had a tag team idea, and if he would be interested in possibly bringing us in. That's when he put us in contact with Jordan Pride.
Mm-hmm.
And then working at Underground, we wrestled AM Vision, and then he was the one who helped me get down to Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
So then I went down to Nashville. I wrestled down there quite a bit for a couple of companies down that way, and then I got to just networking there. Mike Robles, who's just Mark Video, he helped me get to IWA Mid-South, and then also up to First Wrestling in Minnesota. So just the networking, and just at that point, just who you know, because like you were saying, like social media wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
People would see you on these shows, see how you would work, and they're like, hey, I kind of got something for you, and then roll with it.
For sure. And obviously, like those are quite a few notable places, and again, that was, early on, late to mid 2000s, 2010s. What was the independent wrestling scene like, working those territories, for lack of better terms, then versus what your experience is nowadays and kind of what modern independent wrestling looks like?
It was pretty cool, because like there was plenty of shows where Bryan Danielson, Tyler Black, some people were on that I got the experience to be in the same locker room with, and like see them work, talk with them, learn from them. So it was kind of a cool experience back then. Today, with just, in a sense, the market's kind of oversaturated, especially the Chicago scene. There's like 12 feds or more that I know of just in Chicago alone.
Right.
But at that point, there's just so many people just trying to get work. Sometimes it's hard to get your foot into the door there, but then again, there's not too many prominent people who aren't under contract right now with WWE, NXT, AEW, Impact, ROH, and MLW.
And in terms of all those kind of major companies too, like obviously for most independent wrestlers, that's the goal, is to get there or take your craft and hone it to the next level. And I know you've done some extra work for WWE in the past and have gotten to interact in those locker rooms. What were those experiences like, and kind of what were some of the things that you've done with them before?
Surreal.
Yeah.
And the second I got the phone call, and I was actually cutting my dad's hair, my phone went off. And it was a number that I didn't know, and I looked at it real quick, and then I looked away, and I stopped, and I was like, wait, that said Stamford, Connecticut. And I turned the buzzers off, and my dad will be right back. And I answered the phone. It was just like, hi, this is Nancy from WWE. Is this Mason Conrad? And I was just like, why, yes, it is.
Sure.
And then she told me what they were looking for and if I'd be interested, and I said, most definitely. So it was literally that weekend. She actually called me back, and she's like, hey, we're short one person. She's like, do you know anybody that we might be able to help out with us? We need a female.
Where was this? This was for extra work at a live event?
At 2 live events, yes. First one was in Peoria, Illinois.
Okay. Yeah.
And the second one, I believe, was in Moline.
Gotcha. Yeah, Quad Cities area.
Yeah, it was actually when Adam Rose was starting to debut on live shows.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they were looking for his Rosebuds.
Gotcha.
So then when they called me back and they asked me if I knew somebody else, I said, most definitely. And I actually texted Kylie Ray, because she had just started training at that point. And I'm like, hey, can you call me right away? She said, yes. She thought that something was wrong. She's like, what do you need? What's going on? Are you okay? And I said, no, actually, I have an opportunity for you. And she freaked out. And she said, yes, yes, yes.
That's awesome. I didn't realize. So you and Kylie both went down then to Peoria, Moline?
Yeah. So we met up. We drove all the way down to Peoria. And we were both so nervous. Like, where do we go? What do we do? How do we do things? I remember we first showed up to Peoria. And we didn't know where to go. We actually found a random parking lot. We paid for our own parking. And we walked like a block or two over to the arena. And we found out they had actual personal parking for all staff.
Oh, man.
So then we went back out. We found the car. And then we went in there, and they actually took our name down. And we were on a little list. And then we got in. And then at that point, one of the referees found us and said, hey, just wait over here for right now. We met one of the producers. walked us through what we're looking for, and we were the first group to ever be part of the Rosebud, so everything was fresh.
Okay.
With all the equipment they had. We actually literally opened up the boxes. We were pulling out all the uniforms and all the costumes and stuff like that, so we were the first ones to be able to pick what we wanted.
Oh, wow.
And actually wear them.
Yeah.
And it was, again, too, it was super surreal just because I never thought that opportunity would come my way, even for something just so simple as extra work.
Sure.
And then just to see the Usos, Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and stuff like that, these people that I grew up watching, just walking past me, saying hello to, and then being able to sit backstage with them and watch the show. Like, I remember I was in the gorilla position, and they had a monitor right there. And I went to go sit down, and then Cody walked over, and then I actually stood up to give him my chair just because I was always taught treat people who are in the business before you right away with respect. And then Cody was actually like, no, that's your chair. You stay right there.
That's awesome.
And then he got a chair, put her right next to me, and I was just like, oh, that was not expected that.
Yeah, classic guy, man. That's awesome.
But that was Cody.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, more and more people started to show up, and then Cody went to go do his match. It was him and Goldust versus, and I think Ryback versus the Shield.
Okay.
And all of a sudden he was gone, and then all of a sudden I'm getting stares from some people like, why is this kid just sitting here? And then at that point I was just like, what do I do? Cody said to stay
Cody
here.
Cody told me to sit here, man.
I was just like, so I just got up and like kind of like shuffled to the side a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's
but it was really cool to actually go out in front of the live crowd, do the whole Rosebud thing, slap hands with the crowd and stuff like that, do the Congo line.
Important question though.
What's that?
Important question. Yeah. What costume did you choose?
I wore a poncho, the chicken hat, and then the sombrero.
Is there footage of this somewhere?
There might be. Yeah. I have yet to see any.
Oh, that's funny.
But there might be. It was me. It was Kylie Ray, and then the other person who was there was Scarlett.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there might be some footage somewhere with one of them.
Sure. But
I've never actually come across it, unfortunately.
Oh, that's amazing. And you've done that a couple times since then, in terms of doing that.
After that, we went to Moline, and then I got John Cohn's contact information. He said, please keep in contact with me if there's anything in your area. I'll let you know. So I was periodically emailing him. He would respond back right away, letting me know if something was or was not available. I've worked certain other Illinois dates. I've worked stuff in Wisconsin as well. I've had chances of getting like a little bit of like a, not really a tryout, but like wrestling in the ring, rolling around, possibly being able to do certain things. We had like a little tiny tryout match to possibly get like a dark match on SmackDown.
That's awesome.
But yeah, just like a lot of opportunities and chances to like get to bump elbows with people, talk with people, learn stuff, and have stuff broken down for you.
That's awesome. So, I mean, in all of these experiences that you've had, has there been anyone primarily that stands out to you in terms of having the biggest influence on you, and not necessarily in terms of your style or anything like that, but just in the professional wrestling world that has inspired you or has kind of really honed the way that you operate as an independent professional wrestler?
The first person that comes to mind was just the guy that I like. I didn't really realize how much I liked him growing up until I finally got into the wrestling business, started training, and then I was just like, okay, wow, like, yeah, this guy has it all, and that was Chris Jericho.
Okay, yeah.
Like, yeah, just watching him and seeing him, how he would evolve through the ages, change things up, learning how to adapt with the times, and then he was just always a professional. WCW, ECW, WWE, and then here he is now in AEW, bigger than ever.
Have you ever gotten a chance to interact with him at any point?
Unfortunately, no, I have not.
Right on.
Yeah.
Still time. Still plenty of time.
Hopefully one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just seeing the certain things that he does and stuff like that, like it's just like, okay, cool, that this guy knows what he needs to do, especially now with social media.
Yeah.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, he's on it, he's got it.
He's out there. Now,
yeah.
and which is interesting though, because that's something that, knowing you personally, is kind of opposite for you, where you have, as a millennial, don't necessarily fall into some of those cliche categories of being super social media savvy or being out there, and you're not alone. Obviously, there's plenty of people within our generation that aren't. But would you attribute that both to you mentioned before, not necessarily wanting to put a lot of stuff out there because you're a personal guy, but in terms of like your wrestling persona, you broke into the business before all of that was a thing. Is that kind of part of your rationale as to why you haven't, subscribed to it the way that a lot of younger, new and up and coming people who are just training now are like super savvy into all of that, and the focus for you seems to be more into the actual craft and to putting things out there versus being Mason Conrad on social media. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I say that's pretty accurate. I like to get noticed for my work,
Sure.
for what I do, and people actually seeing it instead of a 5 or 10 second clip of a spot in a match.
Yeah, sure.
Like, yeah, that spot looked great, but then if I actually see the full match, was it actually a good match?
That's fair. Sure.
Yeah, so I like being able to people to see what I can do and have the ability to be like, okay, that guy knows what he's doing because I actually saw the full 10, 15-minute match.
Do you have a specific piece of work that you're most proud of up until this point?
Not specifically, no. Like, there's so many matches that I've had over the last 13, 14 years. I'm just like, okay, that was a good match. I really enjoyed that. But then I really think about it. Was it a good match? Because you're your own worst critique.
Of course.
You know, I'll think it's a great match, and I'll go back and watch it. And like, oh, I should have done that different. Oh, that wasn't that good as I thought. But there are a handful of matches that I have enjoyed, like some with Bryce Benjamin, with Mustafa Ali, Jake Shining.
Yeah.
So some of those opponents come to my head right now when I'm thinking about it.
Now, having been around as long as you have been, I know that you've also had a hand in training some people as well. Not necessarily ever as a necessarily head coach of a school or anything like that, but what has your experience been like in terms of seeing some young and raw talent and being able to help them and being somewhat of a mentor and a trainer yourself and being in these locker rooms as a person who has been around for an extended period of time?
It's actually really cool, just for the fact that when I originally went to college, I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
So then all of a sudden, when I actually had the opportunity to possibly help, I always told them, I'm like, hey, I don't consider myself a teacher or like to the level yet of being an instructor for wrestling, but I have had learned a lot of different things from a lot of different people in a lot of different areas.
Sure.
So take what you want, but when I had the chance to do it, like GPA reached out to me. I helped him out a little bit. When Bryce Benjamin opened up the Underground Wrestling Freelance Academy school, I asked him if he needed assistance, and I was there right away to help train Storm Grayson, Pat Monix, Kylie Ray. And then just being on shows, too, especially at Gali, a lot of people have known me there almost for 15 years, and they're just like, oh, like, hey, could you watch this, or how is this, or can I work with you? It's just been kind of a surreal thing that people are actually coming to me for advice, or like I'm able to possibly do certain things and teach certain things and illustrate certain things.
Which is awesome. And I think that's what's going to make people watching and listening to this so intrigued is that outside of our tight-knit circle and people within the industry, they don't necessarily know those things about you or the types of little influences that you've had here, and or the fact that you've done all of these things before, because it's not necessarily common knowledge or public knowledge for that matter. And I know one thing that you and I obviously talk about very much, and not a lot of people know, is that, you know, in terms of Zelo Pro Wrestling as an entity, you've had probably one of the biggest hands in terms of the creation and formation and booking and writing of all those things, and quietly, and we don't put that out there publicly, but for the most part, I mean, you and I work pretty closely on all things Zelo, and that's almost you know, kind of come second nature to you as well, outside of being a talent, but also kind of working behind the sscenes. How do you enjoy that aspect of the independent wrestling world and doing that versus performing? And again, you can talk a little bit about this too. It didn't necessarily come along organically, because there was a period of time where you couldn't wrestle, and this was kind of your only outlet. So walk us through that a little bit too, and how that came about.
Oh yeah, of course. Like, for me, I've always been so passionate about professional wrestling, not just the fact of the art of wrestling, but just how it's done, the ins and outs of everything.
Yeah.
So working for Gali, working for Underground, working for Vanguard, going to Nashville, going to Minnesota, going to California, like just going to the UK, seeing all these different promotions, how they do certain things, and then especially too, every opportunity that I had to work for WWE, I wasn't just geeking out backstage looking at like, oh, there's Chris Jericho or there's Kevin Owens, and I'm just like, okay, how do they do this? How do they break things down? What's this producer for? What's this guy do? And how do they angle certain things? And so I was always just trying to absorb as much as I can.
Yeah.
So then finally, when me and you were potentially discussing Zelo Pro and putting the little seeds and the water on there to plan it into fruition, I'm like, let's take our time. Let's make sure we got all of our ducks in order here, and make sure everything is right when we do it. I've actually thoroughly enjoyed that, especially too at that time I tore my Achilles tendon and had a tear in my meniscus, so I was out of action for a good year and a half.
It was what, about 3-4 years ago, almost, maybe 3 years ago at this point.
Yeah, but about 3-4 years ago. Yeah. So then, you give me that opportunity to be able to like, oh yeah, like here's the book. He's like, what, like you've been around, like what talent do you want? And I was just like, oh, okay, like this person, that person, this person has potential. This person's up and coming. This person's a good veteran. And then being able to just put all that together and like just structure a card and then just from there build the story and just keep going. Like I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did.
Yeah.
But then after the first show and then we did the second show and the third show, I like really like started to fall in love with it.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just like, this is actually really cool. I do like this, the backstage thing and like being able to delegate like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Hey, I want to bring you in. And then this is what we're going for. This is our end goal. It's really cool just to see the work pay out.
No doubt.
The stories that are being told. And it was a really cool experience to be able to get that opportunity, especially after 13, 14 years and seeing what I have seen.
Yeah.
Be able to actually finally implement that to try and even help up-and-comers get the opportunity that I might have gotten when I was first starting, to me is great.
For sure. That's awesome. And especially, you even put aside the time that you physically couldn't get in the ring and do those things, you were able to find a way to pull in your interest and passion for teaching, plus your experience for all of that, and still getting to integrate yourself in a way that was new for you, but you really excelled at it at least from a personal standpoint of being able to see it firsthand. And you know, something that not a lot of fans are necessarily aware of, but like the ability to agent a match, as we call it, or put a match together and be able to find that psychology that's going to work for that given talent in the crowd at any given time is really an art form that can sometimes be lost and sometimes not necessarily even be focused on. But I think it really helps separate a lot of these matches from just being, you know, seconds worth of high spots or from, you know, different clips of things that people see. And to your point earlier, being able to put these long matches together and actually enjoy that piece of work, because in reality, it is a piece of work. It's a piece of art. And being able to master that craft is something that can be a challenge sometimes. And are there things that, you know, you have learned now having done that in terms of putting matches together, not only for yourself, that you've been able to apply now to your own matches that you've gotten back to work for?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like from day one to even to now, like you never stop learning.
Sure. Yeah.
Like different crowds, different atmospheres, whether it's taped for TV, not taped for TV, like everything's different. So you're always learning different things, honing your craft. So to be able to take a step back, be in the backstage role, watch the show, watch how other people work, be like, oh, they actually did that pretty well. I'm going to possibly use that or integrate it, or vice versa. Like, hey, I saw this. Let's critique them and like, hey, maybe you should try it this way next time. And then to see them actually do it and then it pay off, it's really great. So it's just that backstage thing that you don't really see.
Yeah.
Like people like you scratch my back, I scratch your back, the cohesion that all of us do have at certain times to help us progress and get better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to be able to be in that role, to see certain things, critique certain things, and even learn myself, it's great, even to today.
That's awesome, and it's really fun to see. Do you watch wrestling these days on a regular basis in terms of what's out there on TV and the network?
Not as much as I used to,
unfortunately. Yeah. So, okay, what is it that you are doing during quarantine to keep yourself sane and entertained in these crazy times?
Well, play video games.
Yeah. What is
yeah.
What do you have a game of choice?
Currently, right now, I've been rocking it out in World of Warcraft.
Right on.
Mainly because my friends want to play, and so I'm just like, okay, if they want to play, I'm going to play with them. So it's something again to be able to not just be here alone. I'll have the headset on, be able to talk and communicate with them. So it's kind of like I am verbally, virtually with them, but not really virtually with them. Yeah, so I've been playing games, been trying to work out. Definitely been saving a lot more money, not having to eat out because I actually work in the city of Milwaukee.
Okay.
So it's with the whole quarantine thing, working from home, playing video games, trying to work out. Like it's been.
It's a balancing act.
As you can imagine, it's just been like it has its ups and downs.
For sure. Do you cook?
I do cook, yes.
Okay, and pretty proficient. I know you eat because you and I have gone out to plenty of places, and I tell you that I have some tales of this man ingesting an extraordinary amount of food for a guy his size, which is pretty incredible. But what are some go-to meals that you have on a regular basis, regardless of quarantine or not? What's a Mason Conrad specialty?
Huge sushi fan.
Yeah.
If anybody's ever in the Wisconsin area, up in Milwaukee, there's this place called Kyoto.
Okay.
$25, all you can eat.
Oh,
it includes soup, salad, appetizers, regular rolls, specialty rolls. So it's a great spread.
That's your go-to spot?
Yes, I guess my go-to spot. Because usually if I were to get sushi, you've been there with me. Yep. By the time we finish all of our rolls, our individual bills are like $80 to $100.
We're big sushi fans.
So with Kyoto and the $25 thing, it's a deal that I can't pass up personally.
Do you know how to make sushi?
I do actually. Yes.
Do you? No kidding.
Yes.
Have you made sushi recently?
I haven't attempted it in a while.
Okay.
I gave it a shot once, and I was just like, okay, that wasn't too bad. But I haven't really gone out yet to the lengths because I'm able to work from home. So usually when I go on my lunch break, it's maybe 30 minutes. I'll whip something up real quick, or I'll meal prep something.
Right on.
And then just eat that real quick, and then get right back to work.
Have you ever been to Japan or worked in Japan?
Not yet, unfortunately. I almost had the opportunity to do so. But I don't know if something personal came up with my family where I couldn't do it. It was maybe 6 to 8 years ago.
Okay. Is that still something that you have on a goal list in terms of a place to work and go and do? Or what are your thought processes on working in Japan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've like, just outside of wrestling, I've always wanted to go to Japan. I've always been fascinated with the history and the culture there, so I've always wanted to go. And then, of course, with the wrestling, that's just an added benefit now.
Sure. Of course.
So yeah, like one day I do hope to possibly go to Japan, whether it's just to a dojo, just to even learn, or even go to a few shows. The possibility to work in Japan would be just icing on the cake at that point.
Of course.
It's one of the things on the list that I still want to do and accomplish.
Right on. Now, in terms of your affinity for Japanese culture, you're a big comic book fan as well, and anime as well, or not so much.
Some anime, just depends.
Okay, what is your comic series of choice?
Currently, right now, I'm reading mainly Nightwing.
Okay, I'm a big Nightwing fan. Yeah. Robin, Nightwing, love that stuff.
Yeah.
Right on.
Well, like growing up, I really enjoyed it and liked Batman.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I would think I was like 4 or 5 years old when the animated series was out in the 90s. And I saw Robin, and I was just like, oh, that's so cool. He has, like, this guy who's a kid who helps out. And then as I grew up, so did the Robin character, and then he developed into Nightwing.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. Like, I kind of aged with him. So
I kind of grew up with him.
Yeah, exactly. So I was a Robin fan, then all of a sudden into a Nightwing fan. So I've been reading his series. Huge Star Wars fan. I'm currently reading the new Disney Marvel comic series with the Skywalker saga.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, so it takes place right after, I believe, A New Hope, with cool. Luke Skywalker's story and Vader's story.
Oh, that's awesome. Is it interesting? Good stuff? Good read?
It is, yeah. Yeah, because it's just these little things that's adding character development to each of them that you didn't, of course, see, because from New Hope to Empire, what happened in there, we don't know.
Yeah.
So it breaks certain things down. This happened, that happened. So it's pretty good, actually. I'm enjoying it. Even with the new Disney canon, some of the Legend stuff before Disney bought it is still pretty good. I have read a few of those series as well.
That's awesome. And people who have seen you work in the wrestling world know your affinity for Star Wars as you've pulled some elements from the Star Wars world into your persona, whether it's your theme music or your attire has an ode to the Jedi Order, and some of it is obvious. Some of it you have to be a fan to kind of see that and those things. Has that always been a part of your recent persona, or is that relatively new?
Relatively new.
Yeah.
Just because, like, with my style, with my gear, I was always just like, okay, how can I keep certain things different but also flashy in a sense?
Yeah.
At first I kept things basic, and then eventually when I went into the tag team of Victoria's Secret, I wanted to be a little bit more elegant, stand out with the gear and the design. And then when I became another tag team with the Conrads, we were kind of like that old school tag team, kept things very basic, brainbusters, 4 Horsemen style wise.
Yeah, right.
And then after I got injured, and then when I wanted to start getting back into the ring, I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I was just like, okay, what can I do that I haven't really done yet that you don't really see either? And you don't really see too many people put themselves into their characters. And then I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and you don't really see too many people out there doing Star Wars things with their characters or their gimmicks as well. So I was just like, okay, let's try and do this, and then one thing led to another.
That's awesome, and it's fun, and I think you can certainly appreciate it as fellow Star Wars fans. It's always cool to kind of see those things and take appreciation for those, especially when they're little Easter eggs that you got to try to pick out to, whether it's in your move set or what have you. And I know you have some odes to the Marvel universe out there as well, in some of your, just even the names of your of your arsenal and your move set, which is really cool. So in terms of the work of Mason Conrad, and people who may not necessarily be familiar or have seen it before, what would you want the people who are watching the fan world to know about you that would maybe entice them to go look you up and kind of check out your YouTube videos, and then when this is all said and done, hopefully come and see you work again in the future?
The fact that I am able to work an adaptive wrestling style.
Okay.
Like everyone's like, "Oh, what kind of style do you work? Do you work lucha libre? Do you work technical? Do you work high flying?" And I always like to tell people I'm an adaptive wrestler.
Okay.
Like, if you want me to work that standard style, the technical style, that rough brawler style, the high flying style, the lucha libre style, the American style, the Japanese style, I know it. I've learned. I've been taught it. I've learned it. I've been able to do it, and so I can implement it wherever I go. Especially too, if I'm in the South, certain things might not be as prevalent as they are up here, or even in the UK, things are different depending on like the territories.
Right.
Different crowds, different atmosphere, different reactions. So to be able to work a different style, I think makes me stand out, because every match that I work is something different. You're never going to see the same things twice when I wrestle.
Gotcha. And I think that's unique in a way, for sure. And obviously for the work that you do for Zelo Pro, all of your matches are on the Zelo Pro YouTube channel that can be found very easily. I'm sure if people are looking at Mason Conrad, some of your older work might be out there potentially.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which is fun, especially kind of go down and see some of that history that you've been a part of, or especially earlier on with a lot of those other companies that you've been working for. So for you and kind of in terms of your outlook of when all of this is kind of becoming more normal, do you see the wrestling world going in a different direction than it has been in these last decades, if not a couple years, based on kind of all the changes that we see happening right now?
I feel things are gonna take off pretty fast for professional wrestling and independent wrestling, just for the fact that there's been this hiatus right now, and the only real products that we can see are WWE or AEW with their empty arenas. The second we're able to get back out there, everyone's going to be trying to get their hands back in the pot and trying to go full forward with certain things. So I think it's going to be pretty chaotic when everything is said and done and everyone's starting to get back up and going.
Yeah, I can already feel a little bit of the anxiousness that's out there, and just people are craving for things, and hence why we're doing some of these interviews, is just that we long for that connection that professional wrestling has provided, and being able to not only connect with the talent, but also the stories that are put out there. And I mean, for what it's worth, WWE and AEW are the only ones putting out actual live weekly content these days, with sports not being around and anything other than your traditional dramas and sitcoms. There's really not much out there to watch, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. So to be able to do stuff like this, I think certainly it helps us a little bit, keep our sanity, and each have a little bit of a piece of that world that still exists. But there's so much out there that I think a lot of people are longing for, that we'll certainly see come back into play. One thing I wanted to ask you is, what are your thoughts on some of these cinematic matches that have been happening? And did you watch WrestleMania and get a chance to see what some of those things look like?
I did. My interest was piqued. I was actually a little bit let down with AJ versus Taker, because I actually wanted to see that match.
Sure.
In a ring. And so when it was a boneyard match, I was like, what is a boneyard match? And of course, WWE being WWE, they're not going to tell you what an actual boneyard match is until it shows up. It was interesting.
Yeah.
To see it play out, the cinematic aspect of it, to make it more of, again, to entertainment.
Yeah. Did you like it?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
Like, me as an athlete, as a wrestler, like, I want to see these two guys go at it physically and in a ring, especially too if there is a live atmosphere. Of course, that's what professional wrestlers draw on.
Right.
But especially like when I heard AJ Styles was going to wrestle the Undertaker, the fan in me wanted to actually see that match. I'm like, that would have been great. Was I entertained by it? Of course I was, because again, to the fan of me was just like, what's going on? What is this? Right. And I'm watching it like just in anticipation. But then the wrestler in me, I was just like,
For sure.
I would have rather have seen the match.
Of course.
But the Bray Wyatt John Cena one, that one again, I felt fit Bray's character quite well.
Yeah.
With the whole gimmick, the Firefly Funhouse and everything like that. So that one I thought was more entertaining.
Right.
And unexpected as well, with the whole going back to the Ruthless Aggression era John Cena and then the rapper John Cena. And
right.
Mixing things in with the NWO and whatnot like that. So that one I thought was more entertaining.
For sure. And completely unexpected and totally different from the Boneyard match where you didn't necessarily know what to expect, especially on being a second night. How do you replicate a cinematic match and do it differently? And I think it took, I agree, I think it took a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, I was entertained by it, and definitely me, you, and a few other people were talking about it. Like, what was that?
Right.
Yeah.
It's something, man. But I mean, doing what you have to do during these times to keep the people entertained, and
oh yeah, like hats off to them, especially with certain things. Like Undertaker's been doing this for 30+ years. He can't really go like he used to. John Cena's up and coming in Hollywood, so of course, kind of like The Rock, his agent's just like, okay, well, you can't get too hurt because you have these other priorities, these contracts in place. So to be able to find little workarounds, especially for John Cena and all that he's done, be able to actually come back and do certain things like. On that aspect would be great. So
no doubt,
if they keep doing certain things like that to an extent, like more power to them.
Yeah, and fingers crossed we'll get through this relatively quickly and get back to business. So and between now and then, if fans are now watching this and getting familiar with you and starting to gain a further interest, what can they do and how can they find you and how can they support you?
Come to the local shows. Anything that you see my name on, or even just local talent on, like go give it. Whether it's Zelo Pro, freelance wrestling, underground wrestling, like a lot of those guys, like I personally know, and they bust their asses just to try and get good talent on their shows, give guys opportunities that normally wouldn't get opportunities, and then especially too with social media. I might not be the biggest social media person, but my content will be out there, whether it's on my YouTube page, my Instagram, on the Zelo Pro page, or wherever else that I might be popping up at. So any chance you give my name a Google or a YouTube and you can support me by looking and coming in, that'd be fucking great.
What are your social media handles? Put those out there so that they can find you.
I believe most of them are all Mason Conrad 89.
Okay. That's the year you were born? 89? It's a good year?
Yeah. Year of birth.
Yeah.
Plus, two people who are really named Mason Conrad already had those handles, so they had to put the year on there.
Right on. Well, I certainly appreciate the time today and the opportunity to chat. And it's, again, it's great to kind of have these social interactions in a safe and positive way that we can. And I think people are going to be really interested by a lot of the stories that you've talked about today and get a little bit of an insider look behind who Mason Conrad is and some of the stuff that you've been through. So I appreciate you opening up and letting us into your world a little bit. And I think that is certainly going to be of interest and pay off in the long run. So thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate the time. And I'm certainly hopeful that we'll get back to business very soon and people can see you live and in action.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for giving me the chance to actually do this, reaching out to me to be able to go on this platform, especially in the times like this, to do something. It's very unique, very different, so I think it'll definitely help, especially in this certain time.
For sure.
But I'm looking forward to things getting back on track because the weekends come up, and I'm like, what am I going to do on my weekend? I'm twiddling my thumbs here. Like, I'm so used to being out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so now here I am just
waiting, man. Unreal. Well, be well. Good luck to you, and look forward to seeing you again in person very soon, my friend.
Thank you, sir. You as well.
Awesome, brother. Have a good one, and take care.
You too.
See
Bye.
Ya.